They had not drawn a single breath for hundreds of years. He rested perfectly still in his soft, velvet-lined mahogany bed. The people who worked in the house believed the master was completely dead to the world until night came. But he was awake. He was listening. He was waiting. And then the new maid, who was full of fear, did something that broke his forever world into pieces. The iron gates of the Harrington Finch estate stood tall like the door to an old, forgotten castle. Thick mist from the Oregon coast always covered them. For Florence, the big Gothic house was not a place of scary things. It was a last chance to stay alive. She was 24 years old, and she was sinking fast. Her little sister Lily was in the hospital with a rare sickness that made her own body attack itself. The hospital bills kept growing higher and higher. Those bills pushed Florence toward a hard man named Warren Galt. He was a private moneylender who worked in Portland, and he had no kindness at all. Warren gave Florence only 30 days to bring him $45,000. If she failed, he would do things far worse than taking her money. When the Apex staffing agency called with a sudden job that paid 3 times the normal wage for quiet special housework, Florence said yes right away. On her first day, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Montgomery, spoke the rules in a cold, clear voice. You will work only in the master's wing. You will dust, you will polish, then you will leave. You must never open the thick black curtains that block the light, and you must never bother Mr. Roman while he rests. He has a very bad problem with his nerves. Daylight hurts him terribly. He sleeps very deeply, and no one must touch him. Roman was the strange rich man who owned the whole place. The workers talked about him in soft, scared voices. They treated his daytime sleep like a bomb that might explode. When Florence first walked into his large, dark master bedroom, the cold air cut through her work clothes. The room looked like a museum from long ago. It held old wall hangings, dark wood furniture, and objects that belonged behind thick glass. And there in the middle of the room, on a huge 4-poster bed covered with red silk, lay Roman. He was without doubt the most frighteningly beautiful man she had ever seen. His skin was the color of smooth white stone. It had no warmth of a living person. His dark hair fell over the pillows. His sharp, fine face stayed locked in a look of endless calm. As Florence began to dust the small table beside him, her body warned her that something was wrong. She saw that his chest did not move at all. He was not breathing. The silk sheets did not rise and fall, even a little. She leaned closer. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. She held a shaking finger near his lips. Nothing. No breath. No warmth. The man looked like a dead body, except he was not. Trapped by the daylight that held him still, Roman's mind stayed sharp and clear. He was awake, and he found the whole thing funny. He was a vampire king. He had lived through a long war of blood families many centuries ago. Now he hid from the world in this quiet place. The daylight stole his power to move, and left him like a statue of death. But his senses stayed wide open. He could hear the wild, scared beating of Florence's heart. He could smell the bitter taste of cheap coffee on her breath, and he could smell the rich, sweet scent of her own negative blood moving through her veins. Roman loved this game. He loved feeling the fear of new workers when they saw that something was very wrong with him. Then they would run away like little mice. He felt Florence lean over him. He waited for the usual gasp, the fast run to the door, and the letter that said she quit. But Florence did not run. Instead, her eyes moved from his pale, still face to the heavy oak desk across the room. Sitting on top of a pile of old leather books was a raw, uncut diamond paperweight. To Roman, it was just a small toy he had picked up in South Africa in the 1800s. To Florence, it was the answer to all her trouble. It was enough money to pay Warren Galt, pay for Lily's care for the next 5 years, and buy them new names and new lives. Roman heard the change in her heartbeat. It went from pure fear to quiet, hard thinking. Inside his cold, heavy body, he smiled. Ah, he thought, a thief. How boring and normal. Take it, little bird. Steal from the king. When the sun goes down, I will enjoy hunting you. But Florence was not normal at all. She was far too smart to simply steal from a man who owned a house this big. She knew that if she took the diamond, Warren Galt would not just take the money. He would ask questions. The police would come. Roman's great power and money would crush her before she even left the state. No, stealing was a stupid plan. For the next 2 weeks, Florence acted like the perfect maid. She cleaned his room with no mistakes. She never touched the diamond. She never showed fear. But during her rest times she did not talk with the other workers. She went down into the huge library under the house. She was looking for answers about the man who did not breathe. There, hidden behind a fake wall in the family history books, she found an old, crumbling leather journal. It belonged to a man named Nathaniel Reed. The writing went back to the year 1912. Nathaniel had been a human helper, a familiar to the Vampire King. The journal told about the body of vampires, their weak points, and the old laws of Roman's kind. Florence read every page with deep attention. She learned about the daytime lock that held him still. She learned about the great hunter that would wake when night came. And most important of all, she learned about the vinculum sanguinis, the blood debt. According to the old vampire stories, if a human freely gave their lifeblood to a sleeping royal vampire without being forced, and made the vampire drink it while the sun was still up, it started a magic bond that could never be broken. The vampire would be tied by a blood debt. He would have to give the human full protection and one special wish that could not be refused. If he broke the deal, his own magic would turn against him and burn him to ash. It was a crazy risk, a story wrapped inside a legend. But when Florence looked at her phone and saw a mean text from Warren Galt with a picture of Lily's hospital room door, she knew she had no other way. The big clock in the hall struck 4 in the afternoon. Sunset was only 3 hours away. Florence walked into the master bedroom and locked the heavy mahogany doors behind her. The sound of the lock was loud, like a gunshot in the quiet room. On the bed, Roman felt a small spark of real interest. She locked the door. Why did she lock the door? He listened to her steps. They were steady and full of purpose. She was not carrying her cleaning things. She walked straight to the side of his bed and stood over him. Florence looked down at the beautiful monster locked in his daytime sleep. He looked so peaceful, so almost human, but she knew the truth now. She knew the monster that would open its eyes the second the sun fell below the edge of the world. "I know you can hear me," Florence whispered. Her voice shook, but stayed strong. Roman's inner fun disappeared. A cold shock took its place. No human had spoken to him like this in the day for more than 100 years. They always thought he was fully asleep. How does she know? "I know what you are, Roman," Florence went on, stepping closer. "I know you do not breathe. And I know that right now, while the sun is up, you have no power to stop me from doing anything I want." Inside his frozen body, Roman's anger exploded. The pure nerve of this human girl. He was a king. He had killed whole armies in the Dark Ages. He owned money that reached across many lands. And here stood a maid in a cheap cotton uniform, making fun of his weak time. He made a silent, hard promise. "The very second the sun sets, I will tear you to pieces." But Florence was not there to make fun of him. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a heavy, fancy silver letter opener she had taken from the library. Roman felt the silver near him. The metal hummed with a low, painful sound that only his special senses could hear. "Is she going to kill me?" he thought. A rare flash of real fear crossed his old mind. Does she plan to push that through my heart? If she hit true, he would not be able to stop her. His forever life would end by the hand of a scared housekeeper. Florence took a deep breath and made her nerves steady. She did not point the silver blade at Roman's chest. Instead, she turned it around and held the handle tight. She held her left hand out over Roman's face, just above his pale, closed lips. With one sharp, painful cut, she drew the silver blade deep across her own palm. She made a small sound of pain as the skin opened. Rich red blood rose up at once and filled the middle of her hand. The metal smell of her lifeblood filled the cold air of the room. Roman's thoughts spun into pure wild chaos. The scent was too strong. It hit his senses like a hard blow. It was the sweetest, strongest blood he had ever smelled, mixed with fear, wild energy, and a clear, burning will. His fangs ached hard under his gums, wanting to come down. I read Nathaniel Reed's journal. Her voice dropped to a rough whisper as her blood gathered and almost spilled over the edge of her hand. I know about the blood debt. I know that if I feed you freely while you sleep, you are bound to me by the old laws. You will owe me your protection. You will owe me my life, and you will fix my problems. If you say no, the magic of your own blood family will burn you from the inside. Roman was screaming in his mind. No, stop, you silly little fool. You do not know what you are doing. The blood debt was not just a deal. It was a soul-binding magic. It was a shame no royal vampire had suffered for thousands of years. It tied the immortal's power to the short, fragile life of a human. But he could not close his mouth. He could not turn his head. He was a prisoner of the daylight. Florence did not wait. She pressed her bleeding warm palm straight against Roman's cold, hard lips. The moment her blood touched him, the old magic inside his body took over. Roman's jaw opened without his will. His fangs snapped down, sharp and bright in the low light, lightly touching the skin of her palm. He began to drink. He did not want to. He fought it with every bit of his great will. But the deep animal part of his vampire nature was stronger than his thinking mind. The blood was like wildfire, racing down his throat. It burned him with its clean power. As he swallowed, a bright, scary golden light flashed for a short time under the surface of his pale skin. That was the clear sign of the vinculum sanguinis taking root in his soul. Florence made a small, choked sob. Her knees almost gave way as she felt the strange pull of the vampire taking her blood. It was not only blood leaving her body. She felt a strange, ghostly link snap into place, tying her heartbeat to the old sleeping pulse of the creature in the bed. She was suddenly very aware of his anger, his huge power, and his total trap. After what felt like a long time, Florence pulled her hand away. She stumbled back, wrapped her bleeding palm in a white cloth, and breathed hard. Roman's lips were now stained with bright, terrifying red. The golden glow left his skin, and a flush of stolen life took its place. His chest, which had been still as stone, suddenly moved. He took one rough breath. The sun was falling fast. The shadows in the room grew longer, stretching like dark fingers across the wood floor. Florence stood at the foot of the bed. Her heart beat a wild, fast rhythm in her chest. She had done the unthinkable. She had bound a vampire king to her will. "My name is Florence," she whispered to the sleeping monster while she watched the last thin line of sunlight leave the edge of the black curtains. "And you work for me now." As the clock struck the start of night, Roman's eyes snapped open. They were not human eyes. They were pure black, with a glowing, angry red rim, and they were looking straight at her. The feeling inside the large master bedroom changed hard the very second the sun dropped below the horizon, and the Oregon coast fell into the cold arms of twilight. The room that had been quiet and dusty now felt like the air had been pressed tight. Florence could hardly breathe. Her lungs fought against the heavy air that seemed to come straight from the big four-poster bed. Roman did not simply wake up. He came back to life. His change from a still statue of a dead body to a deadly top hunter happened in one instant. There was no slow blinking or stretching of stiff arms. One moment he was dead to the world, and the next he stood only inches from Florence's shaking body. He moved with a smooth, scary speed that human eyes could not really follow. He appeared as a blur of motion that pushed the cold air in a hard gust. Florence gasped and stumbled back against the heavy oak desk. Her bandaged hand rose on its own to protect her throat. Roman's hand, cold as ice from a glacier, and strong as hard steel, closed around her thin neck. He did not squeeze, but the clear thread in his grip froze her. His eyes, with no white at all, burned with a furious glowing red that lit up the sharp fine lines of his pale face. "You proud, deeply foolish little girl," Roman whispered. His voice was soft, like velvet wrapped around a sharp knife. It carried the layered sound of a being who had led armies in centuries long past. "Do you understand even a small part of the size of what you have done? You have forced the soul of a king to the short, fragile heartbeat of a mortal maid." Florence's knees shook. They threatened to fold under the pure, overwhelming fear that poured from him. But she forced her chin up and stared straight into the dark of his demon eyes. "I know exactly what I did," she managed to say. Her voice was only a rough whisper against his icy palm. "And I know that you cannot kill me. The journal was very clear. If you end my life, the magic of the vinculum sanguinis will burn you from the inside at once." Roman's lips pulled back and showed long, razor-sharp fangs that still dripped with the leftover red of her own blood. He wanted to tear her apart. The deep monster part of his ancient mind screamed for payback. It demanded that he punish this bold human for daring to chain him. Acting on that dark wish, he pressed a small amount on her throat. Instantly, a blinding, searing pain exploded inside Roman's chest. It was not a cut of the body, but a fire of magic. A bright, detailed web of glowing golden light appeared under the pale skin of his chest and shone through his silk shirt. The old magic of the blood debt saw his hostile wish toward his master, and struck back with full hard force. Roman hissed in real pain, and tore his hand away from her throat as if her skin were made of melting iron. He stumbled back, holding his chest. His red eyes were wide, with a mix of shock and pure fury. Florence rubbed her neck and pulled in deep, rough breaths of the cold air. Her heart beat a fast, winning rhythm against her ribs. She had won. The beautiful monster, standing in front of her, who had enough power to knock down a building, was completely under her control. "I do not want to be your enemy, Roman," Florence said. Her voice grew stronger and more sure as she watched his magic hold him back. "I did not bind you for power, and I did not bind you for forever life. I am almost out of time, and you are the only one in this world who has the money and the pure fear needed to fix my problem." Roman stood up straight. The golden light under his skin slowly faded as he forced his killing wishes down. The body pain left, but the shame in his mind burned hot. He smoothed the front of his messy silk shirt. His face hardened into a mask of cold, careful calm. "Speak," he ordered. His voice dripped with poisoned dislike. "Tell me what huge, earth-shaking trouble made a housekeeper enslave a vampire." "My younger sister Lily," Florence began. Her voice shook a little at the thought of her family. "She is lying in a special care unit at Providence St. Vincent Medical Center in Portland. She has a bad advancing form of systemic lupus erythematosus. Her kidneys are failing, and she needs constant special experimental belimumab treatments just to stay alive through the week. The hospital bills emptied all my money months ago." Roman stared at her. His red eyes blinked slowly. "You bound an immortal being of darkness to pay a hospital bill?" he asked. His tone was full of rich disbelief. "No," Florence corrected sharply. "I took a loan from a private lender, a man named Warren Galt. He is a cruel, violent criminal who runs a big hidden group in the city. He gave me exactly 30 days to pay back $45,000, plus a huge amount of unfair interest. The time ends at midnight tonight. He has already sent his men to take a picture of my sister's hospital room door. If I do not bring the money, he will pull her off the life support machines and sell me to a trafficking group across the sea to get his money back." A heavy, choking silence fell over the dark master bedroom. Roman walked slowly toward the tall, arched window. He pulled the heavy velvet curtain just enough to look out at the dark, wide grounds of his estate. The pure strangeness of the situation fought with the clear magic pull burning in his blood. A small mortal loan shark was threatening the human who now held his life in her bleeding hands. Warren Galt, Roman said softly, tasting the plain name on his ancient tongue. He turned back to look at Florence, and for the first time, the furious red in his eyes faded. It was replaced by a deep black that seemed to swallow all the light in the room. A dark, terrifyingly beautiful smile spread across his pale face. You chained a hunter, Florence, to deal with a pest. Very well. The blood debt says I must protect you and grant your wish. I shall deal with this Mr. Galt. The trip to Portland happened in total heavy silence. Roman's private car, a perfect midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom, moved smoothly through the heavy Oregon rain. Florence sat in the soft leather passenger seat and held her purse tightly. Roman sat beside her, dressed in a perfect charcoal gray Brioni suit that made him look like a rich business king instead of a night creature. The scent of him, a mix of costly cedarwood cologne, clean ozone, and dangerous winter cold, filled the closed space of the luxury car, and wrapped around Florence's tired senses. Even with her first fear, she found herself looking at his perfect face lit by the passing streetlights. The vinculum sanguinis did not only protect her, it made a strange magnetic pull between them. She could feel his quiet hunter excitement simmering just under the calm surface. He was not simply going to pay her debt, he was eager for the hunt. Warren Galt's place of work was made to look ordinary. It was a strong, dimly lit meat-packing warehouse in the rough industrial part of North Portland. When the Rolls-Royce stopped at the rusty chain-link fence, the two armed guards outside barely had time to notice the fine car before Roman moved. He left the car with a ghost quiet. There was no fight. A soft, horrible crack of bones sounded through the rain. Both guards lay unconscious on the wet ground before they could even pull their guns. "Stay behind me, little bird," Roman said softly, and gave Florence a dangerously charming smile that made her heart jump in a wild way. He reached out and with one easy pull tore the strong steel door off its heavy iron hinges. He threw it onto the wet concrete as if it weighed no more than a piece of paper. They stepped into a large smoke-filled office. Warren Galt, a heavy balding man in a cheap suit with a permanent mean look, sat behind a metal desk, counting thick stacks of dirty money. Three big enforcers stood beside him. Their hands moved toward hidden guns as the warehouse door was ripped away. Warren looked up. His eyes went from the broken doorway to Florence, and then to the calm, perfectly dressed man standing next to her. "Florence," Warren sneered, hiding his first shock with proud boldness. "You brought a lawyer to a blood money collection? I told you time is up. The hospital gets a phone call in 10 minutes, and your sister's machines get unplugged." Roman did not raise his voice. He simply glided forward and covered the 20 feet between the door and the desk in a fraction of a second. Before any of the enforcers could draw their weapons, Roman moved. He backhanded the biggest thug and sent the 300-pound man flying across the room to crash hard into a concrete pillar. He grabbed the second man by the throat and lifted him easily into the air until the man passed out. Then he dropped him like trash. The third enforcer shook without control, dropped his gun, and ran out the back door into the rainy night. Warren Galt was frozen with shock. His cruel pride vanished and was replaced by the deep freezing fear of a prey animal that has seen the top hunter. Roman leaned over the metal desk and placed his pale, perfect hands on the rusty surface. "You have deeply offended my sense of right, Mr. Galt," Roman whispered. His voice vibrated with a dark, unnatural tone that made the glass windows of the warehouse shake in their frames. He let his true face show for one terrifying second. His eyes flared a brilliant glowing red, and his fangs came down fully visible in the dim light. "You have threatened something that currently belongs to me. You hold a debt of $45,000 against Florence. I am here to tell you that this debt is gone forever." Warren sweated hard and shook without stop. He could only manage a weak, whimpering nod. Yes, sir. The debt is gone. I swear to God." "Do not swear to God," Roman said smoothly. His features returned to their perfect, handsome disguise. "Swear to me. If you ever contact Florence again, if you ever look at her sister's hospital, if you even think of breathing the same air as this woman, I will come back. And I will not simply break your workers, I will peel the skin from your mortal flesh and wear it as a coat. Do we have a clear understanding? Yes, yes, absolutely understood, Warren cried out, and shoved the ledger book with Florence's name into a nearby trash can. Roman turned his back on the weak criminal, and offered his arm to Florence. Let us leave. The smell of this place is very tiring. Florence took his arm. Her mind spun from the pure violent speed of what she had just seen. They walked out of the warehouse and back into the quiet safety of the Rolls-Royce. As the heavy doors closed and shut out the Portland rain, Florence let out a huge shaking sigh of relief. The crushing heavy weight that had been destroying her life for months was gone in an instant. "Thank you," she whispered, looking at Roman, who was calmly brushing a speck of dust from his Brioni lapel. "You saved her. You saved us." Roman turned his head, his dark eyes locked onto hers with a force that sent a sudden hot shiver down her spine. The feeling between them had changed at the root. She was no longer just the scared maid who had tricked a monster. The golden tether of the blood debt pulsed quietly between their souls. "You called on the ancient laws, Florence," Roman murmured. He reached out and gently traced the soft curve of her jaw with his cold fingertips. The touch was surprisingly gentle and sent a spark of clear electricity through her nerves. "I granted your wish, I gave my protection, but you must understand that the vinculum sanguinis is a magic that works both ways. You bound me to your service, yes, but in doing so, you have clearly bound yourself to my world." Florence swallowed hard. She realized the huge weight of what she had done. She had successfully traded a normal monster for an immortal and impossibly attractive one. "What does that mean for me?" Roman's lips curved into a slow, devastatingly handsome smile that promised both danger and an eternity of dark care. "It means, my clever beautiful thief, that your work at the estate has only just begun." Did Florence make a terrible mistake binding herself to a vampire king? Or is this the beginning of a dark, unforgettable romance? The line between monster and savior is razor thin, and Roman's true plans remain hidden in shadow. Systemic lupus erythematosus is a real autoimmune disease in which the body's own defense system attacks healthy tissues. It can harm the kidneys, joints, skin, and other organs. Early medical care, proper medicines such as biologic treatments, and strong support from family and doctors can greatly improve life quality and survival. Never borrow money from violent private lenders. Always seek help from legal banks, credit counselors, or hospital financial aid programs. Knowledge of history, careful research, and calm, clear thinking under pressure can turn even the darkest situation into a path towards safety. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video.